Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Um, Before I formally call this meeting to order, I wish to thank Secretary of Finance Tracy Norita and the Special Assistant for Management and Budget, Ms. Vicky. And I also see that Director Alvarez is here, as Mr. Palacios and Ms. Jasmine. Thanks. And when we do rise, please, you're all welcome to sit on the seats that are provided. So we're gonna go right ahead. I would like to call this Fiscal Affairs Committee meeting to order. Today is May 14, 2026. Here in the Senate chamber at the Vice Speaker Jesus P. Mafnas Memorial Building. It is 1:43 in the afternoon. And at this time, I ask Jolene to please call the roll.
Present. Here.
Gaigi.
Here.
With 5 members present, we have the quorum to proceed with this Fiscal Affairs Committee meeting, and let the record reflect the Vice President Ngofnye and Senator Manny Castro is hereby excused from today's meeting. And at this time, I would like to entertain a motion for the adoption of today's meeting agenda. Any member? It's been offered by Floor Leader Manglonio. Any second? Seconded. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion to adopt today's meeting agenda, please say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Today's meeting agenda is hereby adopted. Moving on, but before I do so, I apologize that we are being joined by our presiding officer, Senate President Carl King Neighbors. Thank you, Mr. President, for joining us today. Moving on item 4 on public comment. This is the portion of our meeting where we allow members of the public to offer comments with regards to today's agenda, and primarily on the Fiscal Affairs 2027 submission of a budget for the CNMI government. Let the record reflect that there's none. Under new business, this is the portion that the chair is going to invite the Secretary of Finance and her team, and as well as Ms. Vicky and her team to the seat, and then we're going to begin our discussion for this afternoon. And as we wait the invitees to get settled, I want to go ahead and recognize the Legislative Bureau staff assisting us this afternoon. To my immediate left is the Legal Counsel, Joe Bermudez, and to his right is Fiscal Analyst David Demopan. To my right is the IT Jonathan Diaz, and I see Jolene Tagbell is the Legislative Assistant. She's seated right there in the gallery. And the gentleman that's responsible to ensure our decorum on the floor is in order is the Sergeant at Arms Benjamin Terlai. So with that, I would like to go right ahead and proceed on. And under item 1, under the new business, is the Governor's message 24-261, the proposed fiscal year 2027 budget for the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, or Commonwealth government, and its related agencies. The budget was submitted and received by the Office of the Senate President on May 1st, 2026, with the attached communication from the Governor and the other elements justifying and enumerating the projection that is before the legislature. So at this time I would like to recognize the Secretary of Finance for your opening statement, ma'am, if you wish to.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to each member that's here with us today. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to begin initial conversations on the FY 2027 budget. I hope each of you and your families are doing well now in the disaster recovery. But the work must go on, and we're here, and we have a tough road ahead of us, and I'm hoping that this hearing would be helpful, at least to start the planning for FY 27. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Secretary. Ms. V, you want to say something?
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Fiscal Affairs Committee. Thank you for the invitation to, again, as the Secretary mentioned, to begin discussions on the FY 2027 budget. So the Governor's FY 2027 budget outlook anticipates 157.7 million in total revenues, with 55.8 million reserved for mandatory obligations, leaving 101.9 million available for appropriation. Of this amount, 37.7 million, approximately 25%, is allocated to the public school system, while 64.1 million remains for distribution across the government. Constitutional mandates were set aside prior to applying the 52.19% across the board reduction. The limited funding capacity restricts the government's fiscal flexibility as it continues to confront pressures from super typhoons and locust aftermath, volatility in tourism markets, rising operational costs, and uncertain airline service. These factors are expected to strain essential services and slow economic recovery. Key budget priorities included maintaining a balanced budget supporting public education, funding retirees' health and life insurance benefits, sustaining off-island medical care through the Health Network program, implementing operational adjustments and workforce reductions, promoting economic diversification beyond tourism, and strengthening revenue administration and tax compliance. So in this budget, inclusive of what's calculated is a 40-hour pay period. That's part of this package. So it's based on whatever revenue is available. That's how we were able to balance the budget by taking down that 52.19% to accommodate other essential services like the public school system. Thank you, and we're ready to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Okay, Sus Mossy, Special Assistant. Before I open the floor to any members of the committee, I first would like to ask, as far as your presentation with the 40-hour pay period, is this a representation of applying it across different category of employees that are being funded by the general fund? It doesn't matter what their classification is?
Yes, sir. It's across the board on general funded supported employees. Aside from the constitutional mandates, we had to adjust them out of the total available from the 64.1 million, and then from there calculate what the proportionate reduction would be across the board.
Okay, so that inclusive of the certified employees, like meaning civil service employees, septic service employees. How's that calculated, and how's that?
Everybody, including myself and the Secretary of Finance.
Okay, because obviously the concern that the community is that we're interested to see is how this thing is going to be able to be sustainable for the other obligations, especially if the real time, day-to-day expense and stuff with, say, for example, our school children. You know, we are fully funding a PSS, but at the same time, we're asking their parents to get significant cuts to that effect. So it all boils down to the ability for them to adjust and try to adapt. So I know it's early on the discussion, and we hope that we can be able to just adjust upward or find another source of fund. But I would go ahead and reserve my time for now and just open the floor for any of the members to offer their questions or inquiry if they have any. Any member that is willing to post a question to the secretary, or if you want to answer to that.
I just want to make one comment. So we have an opportunity to submit a revision to the budget on July 1st. So we are going to work on that proposal, to take into account the impact of Typhoon Senlaku.
Okay. Obviously, this thing is unexpected, and we're front loading it. We hope that we get the category, whatever that citation is, that is qualified under the disaster recovery, and then we're going to get a possible reimbursement, so to speak, quicker than normal. Is that something that you can comfortably say openly that it is being factored in for the potential revised budget submittal?
So currently, the federal folks on the ground are, conducting assessments throughout the CNMI, and there would be a project worksheet that would be written, and I believe the initial project worksheet that would come about would be, the operations through the Emergency Operations Center. So Homeland Security would be the first Category B project worksheet that would be written, and we're putting an emphasis on the GAR and the governor and FEMA as well, that this project worksheet is badly needed, because the CNMI looking forward, and then with the business closures, the no power collections, there's certain days of the month that we miss collecting the revenues, and we don't know what it looks like, but we're putting an emphasis to, the federal folks and to our local authorities here that the initial project worksheet should be addressed immediately, because we really need this cash infusion into the Commonwealth so that we could not delay, so that we will not delay payment to our vendors and as well as, our emergency responders. Right now, that account, I checked earlier before we came over, and it's already at negative 900,000.
Okay. All right. Thanks for providing that statement. Any member you to offer a question? I recognize the floor, Leader Maglonia.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Secretary and Special Assistant, and to your team. I just wanted to ask, based on experience with the past storms, will we have an opportunity this time around to apply for a CDL? And if so, has that been talked about within the administration? And if so, what are we looking at? What's the amount? What's needed? Will MPLT support that also?
Documents related to the community disaster loan has been whatever we utilized during its initial phase. We've shared the documentation to the GAR so that he may proceed, because only the GAR can submit a request to activate, a community disaster loan. There is a process, and it's going to take approximately 90 days, and we will also be needing the legislature, because one of the requirements is a full faith and credit. And when we did U2 the last time, the requirement was just through a joint resolution for the full faith and credit, and this legislature, or some of the members that are still here present back in 2020 on the 21st legislature, the Senate resolution was, or joint resolution was passed by both House and the Senate, and that would be that is where we need the assistance of the members of the legislature to support us in that and whatever other future to be able to access cash immediately. The Secretary of Finance can share that with you. But as far as CDL, we've shared the documentation to the GAR so that he can send that letter in to request the Region 9 administrator to begin the activation of the community disaster loan. That process would require some other federal folks that would be involved as far as looking at our single audit, our revenue outlook from going back 3 years or three years forward. And so that is the process.
And is that the alternative plan to make up for this 30 to 40 hour cut for next fiscal year?
It could be used for that purpose. So the community disaster loan cannot be used for certain operational activities. Like we cannot use the community disaster loan for our infrastructure matching, but we've already sought, through the Office of Insular Affairs, how we've used our 702 CIP program funds to match whatever project worksheets that are written for infrastructure, as well as CDBGDR also supported us through that program.
But it can be used for personnel and government operations, yes?
For whatever the government needs based on shortfall in revenue. So for operations, it could be.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the audit reports, and Secretary, do you have any update as to where we're at with that, and would that kind of cause any issues or concerns with submitting an application for the CDL in terms of being behind, or if we're going to be caught up by the time this application will be submitted?
Thank you, Senator. I'm sure that they would need audited information. At this point, we haven't applied for the CDL, so it is yet to be seen what their requirements would be in terms of reviewing our financials prior to approving the application. So I would assume at this time that because of the delay to complete our FY 2023, which was targeted for the end of this month, but we have worked out a revised timeline with our auditor, who also was severely impacted by the storm, that we are targeting the end of June to be completed. So hopefully that lines up with the application process, and hopefully that is sufficient for the application. If not, then I guess it's yet to be seen by the FEMA reviewer what they would require. And hopefully we are able to proceed and not be delayed by the completion of the audit. You asked about just audits in general, and so we do have an expedited timeline to complete the audits. So we are hoping that just with the 1 month delay of 23, it would push out the other timelines for the subsequent audits for 24, which was targeted for September, and 25, that was targeted for December. Again, we are working closely with our auditors. We know that they were affected and they're trying their best to complete it. We're just waiting on their testing. So hopefully we stay within that 1 month delay and not anymore.
And also looking at the debt service, other than what's listed as bank charges, is the BOG loan included in there somewhere, or is that something that you've worked out with the bank to see if a forbearance or an extension may be granted?
No, the inclusion of our debt service is as is. There's no deferral or any disaster-related extension. Because this is for FY27, they have offered an extension for the current year payment, which is usually due May 1st, but they allowed us to pay towards the middle of the month. So we did take advantage of that extension because offices were closed.
Okay.
But for FY27, no disaster-related relief at
Okay.
this time.
And would this be the 2024A pension obligation bond of 5.9? Is that to Bank of Guam or something else?
2024A is to Bank of Guam,
Okay.
yes.
Have you looked at have you analyzed positions that that may be funded federally, like partially funded by federal grants? Or I know in the past you've kind of worked out with the OIA to allow for first responders, particularly DPS and DFEMS. Is that still on the table for next fiscal year, or can that be extended to other departments?
So for the OIA grant, for the law enforcement grant for our DPS, fire, corrections, customs, and ABTC, when the proposal was submitted, it was specifically for fuel, communications, utilities, operational activities for the law enforcement, including their overtime, but not to hire a person under that particular grant.
Okay.
If you're talking about, like if it's other programs, what we've encouraged the department heads, any program that they have available, if a person is supporting that program at a percentage, then they should be funded at a percentage, or go back to the grantor and seek grantor approval to increase the the ceiling under positions that would be allowed for that particular program. But the opportunity is there. We just have to ask.
Okay. And is the OIA grant for those law enforcement, does that carry on to next fiscal year?
So there is a request for FY 2026. We are anticipating that grant to come down to the Commonwealth very soon. And yes, it is included in FY 2026.
Okay. And you mean 27?
No, the 2026 grant is, we have not received that, and that's coming down very soon. FY 2027, there would be a budget call as well for FY 2027, and I believe that is either August 1 or September 1.
Okay. When you say very soon, when that money does become available, would that account, I guess, be able to pay for the disaster overtime? Or
So for the disaster overtime, we want to be able to not duplicate any efforts. So for disaster overtime, it should be part of the Category B public assistance program through FEMA that should be able to cover that. If the employee is responding to either it be a disaster response or a disaster recovery, their time and effort should be captured under the program.
that's not reimbursable? Is that something that can be paid for by the municipality and then reimbursed later on?
So if it's paid for by the municipality, then we can reimburse it, but there has to be that documentation put together so that FEMA can include it in the project worksheet as part of Category B for response and recovery, and then we can do an expense transfer. Once it's approved, we can expense transfer whatever it is, for that particular individual or employees, and then we can reimburse the CNMI back.
Okay. And last one for now, since we have the director here, any update that we can share with our constituents in terms of tax refunds?
Yes, so for refunds, we do plan on hopefully getting started on the refund processing by next week. We do have testers on it. Since we've gotten back to work, the testers have been on there trying to get the system ready to do tax refund processing. Right now, it's just not ready. The system is not ready to push out any refunds. But as soon as it is, we plan on just pushing out refunds daily. That's the plan. But we'll see how it goes once we go live with it in the system.
But are you aiming for the end of the month, or we're looking at possibly next month?
Yeah, or if everything works out, the 18th is the date that
Okay.
we have.
Okay. I mean, that's great news. That's something that I guess people can.
Senator,
Look
right,
forward to.
just to clarify, the 18th is when the system will be ready for
Okay.
us to begin processing returns, not checks being printed just yet. It's to allow us to even start processing. So with that, as soon as we can get returns in and we can push it up to Treasury, we plan to do that on a daily rather than in the past where we wait for a huge batch to go out at once and wait for 30 days. We want to push out checks as soon as possible so that people can be helped with their recovery efforts.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the update. I'll yield for now, Chair.
Thank you, Floor Leader Donna Manglonia. This time we recognize Senator Paul Manglonia.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, first of all, I think this proposal, right, I know it's done based on the numbers in fiscal year 2026, right, was 172, not 2025. It says based on fiscal year 2025 actual collection of 172. Is that fiscal year 2025 or 2026?
Yes, 2025. That ended in September of last year. We are currently in FY 2026.
2026. So
Yeah.
we're
So we're
You're
basing
using
off
the number
historical
from
information.
the prior fiscal year.
Yes.
And then you're just trying to get the best numbers projection, no? So anyway, based on that, it's like 14 million reduction, right? Almost little over 14 million. And because of that, you came out with 40-hour reduction in the pay period, right? Okay. So I guess my question is that based on those numbers, is that what you're recommending to us, or you're just trying to balance the numbers? There's no way we can cut other parts of the government so that we can make it 35 or 30, or I'm just trying to figure out whether you have put your priority already, because normally when you throw out numbers like this, people out there are worried, right? Some already decide to pack and leave because they take this to their heart that it's and we all know it's very bad, right? But they're thinking that this is how we want to tackle it, to cut 40 hours, and not cut this or cut that and tell that to the legislature. Ne? In other words, you have Governor's Revenue Council. So what about a Governor's Budget Council to offer the best proposal? So I'm just trying to understand this, because in the history of our government, we never cut more than 20 hours, right? I don't know if anybody ever remember the government cutting more than 20 hours in a pay period. But this is asking for 40 hours. And I know that maybe that's not our intent, but that's what the media puts out. And so the governor needs to assess this, your group. And I'm glad that you're saying on July 1st, you're going to adjust it. So we hope when you adjust it, you call in all your people and look at school, hospital, everything, and what other earmarks, right? And offer that to us that this is based on the administration's sentiment and belief, and this is what they want to offer the people, right, as far as the resources we have. So we hope that we can get that in July, because it helps us also to move forward from that, no? And not, I mean, I guess everyone out there, the only thing they talk about is, especially now when with all the suffering, right? They're saying 40 hours. So that's what we hear outside. Like, so I don't know if I'm making myself clear. Maybe we need help in adjusting the other areas. I know our fiscal analysts have come up with an assessment as to areas that we can maybe reprogram, move around, or un-earmark. And so hopefully those kind of suggestions will go a long way. Because we're only talking about, I mean, I don't want to sound like that's nothing, right? 14 million. So my question is after this super typhoon, I know that we might have to borrow money. I think in the meeting earlier this week with some of the leaders, you were trying to borrow some money for frontliners, right? To that we know in the end they will reimburse. So my question is, because of this super typhoon, what do you think is the net impact? Are we gonna reduce that 14 million to 7 million, or we're gonna maybe even end up with a positive net, right? So what's your sense?
Thank you, Senator. Right now, you asked what is the impact of the storm. We don't know yet. We need to gather that data on the collection performance for the month of April, so post-storm. So we are still preparing that report. We will take that and hopefully project out and see how it will affect the following months as we close out the fiscal year. You also mentioned potential borrowing to help with payments that are due now because of the disaster. That plan and that initiative is only for disaster-related expenses. It's not for the budget at this time. I'm not the GAR, but in our discussions, the declaration of disaster approved by the president could possibly allow the CNMI to borrow up to $5 million. In the past, you know that we were able to get approved beyond $5 million, but that requires an act of Congress, US Congress. And so we are a long way from that and expecting to have anything beyond $5 million. So at this point in time, we are planning and pursuing the CDL, which has its process, as Ms. Vicky mentioned, and that amount of money is going to prioritize disaster-related expenses. So I would not anticipate that would change the FY27 budget at this time. Should US Congress allow us to borrow more than $5 million, that would definitely change the budget. But at this time, I can't give you an answer on that.
Okay, so maybe I'm not making my question clear, because we have records every time we have typhoon, right? We have employees that, for example, frontliners, normally we pay that from our local funds, but now because of the disaster, right, it's in lieu of the local funds. Now we're using disaster assistance money. So we're gonna save in the fiscal year because for a period of time, we don't have to use our money. We just have to find some local, I mean, because they only work so many hours a week, right? So you don't charge their regular hours that they're doing emergency work, or?
The emergency work is actually additional hours that we did not plan for. Regardless of the storm, employees were given administrative leave to take care of their homes and recover from the storm, so our payroll costs remain the same. We still have to pay employees their paychecks even if they did not come into work, that's the admin leave. Now, because you know that we're in austerity, we've only budgeted at 70 hours, but they are working way beyond that to respond to the disaster. So that's the disaster cost that we are hoping FEMA can help us with that, with the reimbursement that you're talking about. So I heard you mention savings. There are no savings
There are
right
no
now.
savings really, because you only have, let's say, for example, you have 50 officers. If those 50 officers are now working those hours, then those could be charged to the disaster recovery effort, right? We don't now need 50 officers to work 40 hours a week to be paid by the government for their regular duties. Now they're being assigned to this disaster recovery, and so instead of 50, now we have 35 that are doing the traffic and the regular, duties that they normally do, because we take 15 of them and assign them to following these trucks and, monitoring the damaged traffic lights and all that. Those should be paid under the disaster recovery funds, right? So I don't want to go to the detail. All I'm saying is we know after a typhoon, how much money we're going to normally get us help with, that you can offset your regular salary, normal, payroll salary. And I don't know what's the calculation, but by the time you submit an adjustment, you wouldn't have any number like showing that the cost for the CNMI for personnel will actually be kind of subsidized by future reimbursement?
Not at this time.
Not?
Yeah, we're still processing that pay period that covered the time of the storm. So we don't have the labor costs yet for disaster response.
If I may add, Senator, so in the budget also, what triggered that huge proportionate reduction is this time around, we cannot go out and borrow 27 million to pay for the settlement fund, and so we have to include that in this budget, 27 million. And if should there be some manna from heaven, we can come back to the legislature and request for reappropriation of whatever we don't have to pay for under the settlement fund in particular, just like how we did it in the last 2 years.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to allow other members, but just one last observation here. On the group health life insurance, I'm seeing total of 6.39 million for the group health life, and I just raise a flag here for me. The 4 million for the retirees, 4 million for the life insurance, and 2 million for the active employees. As far as numbers, how many are we talking about? How many retirees? How many active employees are we talking about? You have the numbers there?
So for whoever's participating in the active government employees, everyone's included. We don't have that number. We would have to run a separate report to be able to determine how many employees are participating in the group health and life insurance. But we know that, in the renewal process that we had to go through, there were employees that pulled out from the government health insurance program. Now for the active retirees, I believe there's still a bit. I believe there's still over 3,000 available or active retirees with their survivors.
3,000 some, and a ballpark number for active employees, regardless whether they're a member or not. I'm just
total count of active employees, as authorized by the budget, 2,342, but right now active for the general fund is 1,776. But not all of them are participating in the
Yeah.
group health.
But the reason why I'm concerned about this is, and I'm mentioning it now, even though it's not direct impact, right? Because I assume finance is the one negotiating the contract, right? So just right off the bat, it raises concern for me because all retirees, 90% of them are 65 and above, maybe, right? So I don't know if you're aware, but 65 and above, we're all covered by Medicare. So if I were to incur $1,000 medical billing tomorrow, Medicare will pay 80%, and Aetna will pay only 20%. In fact, 80% of that 20%. So why are the retirees paying $4 million? Because even if the numbers are double, right, the Medicare pays for these services.
Senator, for the GHLI negotiation with Aetna, that factor is included in the contract. So the fact that's part of the population in the group health life insurance, so they look at the members not as retirees or active employees, they just look at you as a member of the plan. And so we are aware that some qualify for Medicare, and they do get billed first, and then whatever's remaining gets billed to Aetna, and that's already built into the rates. So the current
So in other
rates
words,
that are,
us retirees were subsidizing the government employees
I wouldn't say that
because we're paying only whatever bill I incur, the Medicare pays 80%.
in my discussions with Aetna, the population of our members gives us a very high risk portfolio because we have active, healthy employees who don't necessarily use the plan as often as the older and sicker population. And so we take those factors into account
Okay.
when they price our premiums.
Okay, so thank you, Secretary. I'm just going to leave it here with this comment that on Guam, if you are a retiree and you qualify for Medicare, this is where the subsidy is balanced by giving the retirees with Medicare to pay for their Medicare billings. So government of Guam actually offsets the retirees. So I know I'm a retired person, but I'm speaking for the other retirees who are well aware of how they do it on Guam, the payment they pay to Social Security for Medicare, because of the fact that Medicare, when they are 64, Aetna pays for 80%. The minute that they turn 65 and qualify for Medicare, it turns to 20%. So therefore, at that point, government of Guam, realizing that, pays for that $80 or something a month that they pay for Medicare. Just want to point that out, make everyone aware, so that this is something that in the future, when you discuss with Aetna, switch it around a little bit. I don't know, especially since we're trying to cut 25% from the retirees. So this is just something that I just drew out. Thank you, Chairman. I'll let the others.
Thank you, Senator Manglonia po. Wish to welcome Vice President Magonia. Thanks. Thank you. Good afternoon. At this time, recognize Senator Frank Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, Secretary and Vicky, and the rest of the DOF team. I appreciate coming down here to, discuss this very critical matter, and this is something that I share the same sentiment with Senator Paul when it comes to cutting government hours to 50%. And we all understand that, most especially those low earning classes, if you cut 50% of their hours, if they have car loan or home loan, they might have problem with their obligation. So I just wanna, I know that you guys came out with 40 hours because funding issue, right? But this is something that I don't understand when you mention funding issue, but yet why are we hearing surplus? Where do we exactly get that $2.1 million of surplus? And a lot of our people are questioning why we're gonna get cut 40 hours when Secretary of Finance come out on the paper that we have surplus. I wanna understand where is this 2.1 million came from, and if this is coming from 2025. This is 2025, right?
The budget here is for 27, and for the FY 2026 budget was the excess funds from the lapse funds from FY 2025, which was appropriated separately.
So this is from 2025 lapse.
The 2.1 million surplus.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that means, I remember when we're discussing about the $3.7 million, and that's coming from last minute of payment of whatever what that taxes came from. We discussed about the $3.7 million. So that means 3.7 plus 2, so it's actually $5.8 million that it's that we have. It's not surplus. It's supposed to be a supplemento, right? It's not exactly a surplus. It's a supplemento for 2025. So I'm trying to completely understand why we're having all this on the last minute. This amount of money. Why is not stated in beginning of 2026 budget process?
I think to get to the heart of your question is we have pots of money available that's waiting for appropriation while we're looking ahead to FY 27 and we're looking at cuts. And the difference is this year we paid the NMI settlement fund through a loan from MPLT, while when we look forward, that obligation now is to be covered by the budget, right? And so we have to be careful to separate the pots of money that are available that is being considered right now. And so I know we've had a lot of hearings and discussion on the other pots of funds that are not projected revenue. They're collected revenue already pending legislative action, right? But I think to help the stakeholders and the government employees that are worried is that the only difference between then and now is we have a larger obligation now to pay because we have to pay the settlement fund. That's the difference. We could take those outstanding pending appropriations and apply it to the budget. That's really on your table. But the way that we see it right now is we are just using projected revenue, projected obligations, and what's remaining is for government operations. So I know it may sound confusing for the everyday stakeholder, but again, we're looking at FY 2027, and our position for next fiscal year is we have a lot more obligations to pay now with general fund.
So exactly where is this 2.1 came from?
Those are available funds that we cannot spend without
Yeah,
appropriation.
where is this available funds came from?
I will have to get back to you on that.
Isn't this came from
sources.
Isn't this came from the first quarter actually? The savings of first quarter, because I remember the budget law. The budget law is stated that the $156 million will start on January, but then you apply it back after the revised budget was passed. You apply it to October and December first quarter.
Sorry, Senator, I know you're asking for documentation on that. Just give me a moment and we'll collect that for you.
That's very important because I remember that portion of the budget was vetoed when for our fiscal analyst to be able to go into munis. When is our fiscal analyst can be, because it's already low because we override that. When can the fiscal analyst be able to go into munis or get access to munis?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of setting it up.
Because
can do that.
if our fiscal analyst can be able to access, then we'll be asking
Sure.
this question. That's why that's important that our fiscal analyst should be able to access to munis so that he can be able to furnish us with the information that we're asking, rather than asking you directly, unless we have our fiscal analyst miss something that it's important that we have to get it from you guys. But the 2.1, it's obligated to give 25% to the retirees and 25% for PSS. And if that amount is coming from the first quarter, we're duplicating giving 25%. No offense to PSS, I have nothing against PSS, but if that came from the first quarter, the 2.1, we're giving double, because they got that already from the 24-14. From the $179 million ceiling. So we're duplicating it again. I'm not against PSS, but we have a lot of, for example, we're cutting down to 50% of the government employees to 40 hours only. That's too, that's too. It's too much to cut. Like what Senator Paul was saying. I've been here for 16 years. I never seen a cut over 30 hours, or even I think 20 hours. So I think we should do better than that and not cut down 40 hours. That we have 2.1. We still haven't received any information from DOF and public system of the 4.9. And I know that we have some overpayment at the settlement fund. Those are the resources that we need to look into that, whether we can be able to to assist in this regard, because we cannot see or allow 40 hours for government employees, because everybody have their obligation, and we cannot. We're now in this calamity, trying time. The gasoline is so high, everything is going up. So I think we need to look into those and see what we can do to help our government employees as well, because they're the backbone of our government. So are you back, Chairman? And
if I may add, Senator Cruz, so I believe that the reason why whatever out there that has been introduced and has not been passed by the legislature, we cannot take those funds and commingle it with FY 2027, because those have been accounted for different purposes, like for PSS and others.
Yeah, I understand that, but the administration and finance should be telling us all those, so the House can start doing those and pass those appropriations, so we can able to come to the Senate and do it as well. But if you guys are not identifying those, there's nothing, we cannot move forward with that.
I believe they were identified and they're already in a form of a House bill. It just needs to pass between the two houses. So that's where it's sitting right now.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. Sorry, before I hand it over to the next member, can you just clarify for us, how did you guys come up with PSS's 25%? It seems like everything else is going down, but here we see PSS is 25% with an increase.
So we took the total budgetary sources available and we subtracted the earmarks, the unsuspended earmarks and the special earmarks, and then from that net amount we took 25% of that, and that's how we arrived at the 37.7 million.
Which is more than what the 25 would actually be. If we're talking about 150, what is it, 157 less earmarks at 50, what is it, 55?
It becomes 150.1 million something, and then you take 25% of that, and that's 37.7.
The remaining 101 million, 25% of that would be 25 million. Is that overstated or an error?
It's calculated from the top, from the budgetary growth after the earmarks, after the special earmarks and the unsuspended earmarks. It does not include the general earmarks.
Okay. Recognize Vice President.
Thank you, Floor. So just some clarifying questions, since we're on the PSS topic. The 25% that was identified for the next fiscal year, was the same approach taken that was done for this fiscal year? Because I know that that was such an issue of how we, or how it was identified, right? Whether it was taken after everything was subtracted or was it taken at gross? So I just, for consistency purposes, did finance take the same approach this time around? Okay.
So how the current calculation was the same? We used that same methodology as current, but what was appropriated for PSS was much less.
Okay. So for this fiscal year, we took the gross and subtract all the earmarks and all the obligations, the debt service, or not obligation, but debt service. And then whatever that was remaining, that we gave the 25% to PSS. Is that?
The methodology, as how I explained it earlier, we took the budgetary growth less the special earmarks and the unsuspended earmarks,
Okay.
and that would have netted us 40-point-something million for PSS. However, what was passed by the in the appropriation only netted PSS 35.2 million.
Oh, okay. Okay. So clarified. So then,
And if I may add also that $4.7 million or $4.9 million that is with PSS, and that was introduced by the House for PSS to allow them to continue to use it, that would have added up to the 40 million. And,
okay.
but that has not passed the
So the increase that we're seeing right now for the $4+ million has nothing to do with revenue forecast increasing, right?
no.
Okay. So that's understood. Okay.
Sorry, can I just clarify before you
Sure.
moved on? Again, sorry. So you're saying that the anticipated or the projected revenue for 27 is 157, right? Is that 157 less debt service and all these earmarks comes out to 55 in total, which leaves a net of 101, correct? So 25% of that would be 25 million.
So it's the calculation is total budgetary growth, which is the 157.7, and then we subtracted the special earmarks of 2.4 and the unsuspended earmarks of 4.2.
What about the debt service?
No, we did not take that into account because we did not. We are following what we had, the same calculation that we use for current year, for FY 2026.
Okay.
If we had to calculate it based on after the debt service, the obligations that we have, PSS would only get 25 million.
Right, because in the past we've also included the 27 million, what is now 27 million, prior to any 25% to PSS, right? But it seems like now it's not included. Aren't we supposed to subtract the settlement fund prior to any 25%?
From the inception of 1812, which I believe goes back to 2012. The calculation was based on the net available for appropriation after all the bond payments, the debt service. After all that is taken into account, the net available for appropriation, we calculate the 25%. We did that from 2012 up to 2025. Now, the slip opinion has been issued by the Supreme Court, and we've never actually processed the calculation based on the slip opinion. But from 2026 on, we've started to do that so that we can prevent any litigation against the Commonwealth, which would have, gone back to 2012 or from the inception of 18-12 and have to pay that to PSS.
No, but I mean, that wouldn't be the case in the current fiscal year, because if you were to apply that same principle today, PSS would be getting far more than 33 million from what was passed in the budget, because our budgetary resources dropped or is projected to drop next fiscal year. So how is it that they're getting more next fiscal year than what they're getting today, if you're saying that you applied that same process today? If that makes sense.
We can go back and forth on this, but I'm looking at my worksheet and what it looks like on how the calculation occurred for the current fiscal year, and as well as the FY 2027. That was how we calculated for the public school system, and how I said earlier that the current year, although we did the calculation at a little bit over 40 million, PSS did not receive the 40 million. They only received 35.2 based on the budget revision 24 public law 24-20.
Okay. We'll take a look at the current revised budget proposal while the Vice President continues with their question. Thank you.
Thank you, Flor. Actually, I was just gonna ask our fiscal analyst to verify and confirm for FY26 whether or not the debt service was included as part of the subtraction from the gross to get the net. So we're getting from our fiscal analyst that for the current budget, right, we did include the debt service and whatever other legal obligations as part of the subtracted part before we have the net to appropriate. But I'm hearing differently now from the explanation that's not the case. Are we like on the same page?
So whatever the governor had submitted, again, how the House, addressed the budget in itself did not take into account what the governor had requested for the public school system. It was much less. But how we calculated it was the same process we used calculating for FY 2027.
Okay. All right. Okay, we'll just move on to the next one because we'll do more verification. So can we go back to the funds that are pending appropriation? So it was stated earlier that there's still some funds pending appropriation from the two houses, correct? And is that correct? Okay. Can you tell us how much is pending in total that's still yet to be appropriated?
I believe the 4.9 million is still pending, and it's House Bill 24-70. There's House Bill 24-74 for $1 million, and then House Bill 24-75, which is the 3.7, and that has already been passed by the legislature.
So it's 4.9 plus the 1 million, so almost 6, so about 6 million. Okay. And those were funds that came from FY25. Those are lapse funds that came from FY25. Just clarifying.
sorry, Senator, can you repeat what House bill maybe that's pending?
Oh, that's okay. So you're saying there's two House bills that are pending, or three,
Confirm 3.
and the total for all three bills come out to 4.9. Okay, and those are not included in the FY, okay. And those are lapse funds from FY 25.
Not all of them.
Not all of them? Can
They're
we get
different.
some breakdown as to where these funds are coming from?
For the 1 million that was from MPLT, that's pending. What was that, Jazz? House bill 24-74. The 4.9 million for House Bill 24-70 was the lapse funds from PSS, and then the 2.1. 24-84 I don't have in front of me, and I'm sorry, but I don't have internet access right now. It's kind of spotty in
Okay.
here, so I can get back to you on that
Okay,
question.
thank you. So the lapse funds from PSS, can you just help us understand how that happened?
We became aware of that information. We included it. The governor had sent a message to the presiding officers. We were called in for a fiscal affairs hearing where PSS acting commissioner was here, and the budget director, I'm not sure what's the title, finance director, and it was confirmed by them that those funds were available. So
Okay.
it was not remitted to finance. If it was, I could certify that for you.
Okay.
But because I could not certify, they were brought in and confirmed at that hearing that it was available. So I think that was, that's where that was
Okay.
left off.
Great, thank you. That's all I have, Chair. I yield.
Thank you, Vice President. Mr. President, you recognize?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. V, and also Secretary of Finance and staff for being here today. It is much appreciated. This is going to be, I'm sure, a lengthy process, one of many meetings that we'll have. I just wanted to kind of clarify, going back to what Senator Paul was alluding to with regards to the first responders. As it relates to the typhoon response, it's everybody that was activated, not just the first responders. Am I correct? Right, that are submitting the Cat Bs to be reimbursed.
Yes, we're talking about typhoon pay that covers all typhoon activity, disaster activity.
Okay. And the way that works is, like, for the municipalities of Rhode and Tinian, you would use your local funds or whatever funds you had to front the money and then submit the Cat B forms, which the GAR would then go ahead, process, and then that money would be reimbursed at a later time.
Yes.
Okay. So that's kind of to clear up why there is no savings, quote unquote,
Yes.
right, in this immediate time during the storm. I do want to kind of bring the discussion back to something that we are getting some reprieve from, but it's lurking in the wings, is CUC and the cost of fuel and the impact that this will have on the government in its entirety. It's not just an individual home. Of course, it will impact the homes, especially with a 30-hour reduction in an already reduced, with austerity currently in place, an additional 30 hours of austerity. Then knowing the volatility of the fuel situation, right? Every month, we had a meeting with Mr. CUC, and Simon Sanchez had spoken about how Guam is in the same exact boat, but they had a little bit more in their coffers to stave off the immediate payment and like the immediate just shock of having to pay double the rates for fuel, and that was just for 1 month. We all know that we go to the gas stations every day, or we drive past them, and they're fluctuating on a weekly, daily basis. CUC, however, purchases their fuel bulk at a fixed rate. So my question is how are we gonna do our governmental operations, knowing that we're we're not so much up to date on our CUC payments, and then moving forward as the price and that commodity fluctuates, how do we address that on a scale, and have you guys had discussions about it, and what are the options that you guys have vetted out?
Well, our first step, of course, was conservation and then a transition to prepaid meters. Now, the effect of the rising fuel prices on the prepaid meters is yet to be seen. And so what we can expect is that the amount of load that they're going to get now might be reduced even more if the prices increase, and the government will be left to conserve even further, which would mean an impact to government operations. The funding that we have available for these prepaid meters are in the appropriation. We have some funding that came from OIA, right, that we have taken into account already for utilities. But moving forward in FY27, it would be what's appropriated in the general fund that would go towards government prepaid meters. I would assume that the fuel would also impact the fleet, the government fleet, whoever needs that fleet to run the patrol cars, the ambulances. It will affect them as well. So I can assume that the rising costs will affect government services. We just don't know to what extent at this time.
So you did say that there were some funds that were furnished through OIA or other funding sources. Could you explain when those funds arrived and how they were just for the information of the committee?
We had received that in the first quarter of the fiscal year for specific uses. I believe that was furnished in our last hearings, but I can get you an update on the uses so far. We can provide that to you.
And I know you had said earlier with regards to you had to wait until you were able to reconcile the funds in and funds out with regards to the typhoon and the Senlaku, but do you have a number of just how much money estimate has been spent by the central government in this effort to recover from Senlaku?
So earlier I mentioned 900,000. I was close, not looking at the report, but it's a total of negative $883,000. That includes expenses, expenditures, and obligations to date. As of today, maybe by just within the hour, and it includes for Saipan, Tinian, and Rhoda.
Okay, and do you have a breakdown on, because I noticed when we're discussing Senlaku and the aid, right, funding like Senlaku associated expenses, can you give me are you able to bifurcate just the payroll versus all others? So how much more money have we went into payroll?
Go ahead.
That number does not include labor costs yet.
Okay.
We don't have that number yet. The timesheets are literally still being processed. Once they're entered by payroll, we'd be able to see it come up on the account. But at this time, we don't have that number.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't be doing my senatorial service if I didn't ask, because we have had our constituents that work for the first responders, DPS and whatnot, that have been talking about how they have not received their overtime pay for several pay periods. And I was just curious as to what information you could provide to guide us as to what are some of the reasons for those delays.
I can answer that. I got an update from our payroll division yesterday. This is regards to the overtime prior to the storm, and payment of overtime for law enforcement agencies is funded by the law enforcement grant from the Office of Insular Affairs. There's a process to pay that out, which includes the department submitting it to the CIP office for review and then drawdown for payment. So specifically for the pay periods right prior to the storm, it was submitted to our office, and then office is closed for the storm. So when we opened up just this week, I confirmed it was received and is in process for this week.
Thank you for that. That's greatly appreciated, and we'll bring calm, I hope, to some of the people that are going through it. Of course, everybody needs same thing with the tax returns. Everybody needs any kind of financial relief, right, to help themselves recover from whatever is not covered under FEMA, or just personal expenses and living expenses and so forth and so on. I did want to kind of touch bases or kind of set the record on the PSS money. When we did have the meeting with Fiscal Affairs in regards to the 4.9, it was Finance's position that they were going to use the single audit findings as a certification of funds to request that money be inserted into the 2026 fiscal year budget. Now, after some lengthy discussions with PSS and just internal discussions with the members of Fiscal Affairs, it is now our belief that the 4.9 is a combination of multiple funding sources, and that it's not entirely a general fund. But I wanted to know, being that it appears that this practice for PSS not to make finance aware of any unspent funds, right, that need to be reappropriated for next fiscal year, has been something that has been ongoing. So my question to you is, what safeguards do you have in place, or what process do you have in place to ensure that the general funds that you are giving to PSS are exhausted, and that, because for all of the members here, once that date hits and you guys block out Munis, then we wake up, that money's gone immediately, right? But PSS for some reason falls into a different category where the monies can be shifted. So I just kind of wanted to pick your brain or ask your advice or opinion as to why this has happened so many times.
As to why this has happened so many times in the past, I can't answer for that. What I can assume, again, is that we were basing off that submission to the legislature off the FY 2022 budget at that time. And like any other stakeholder, we're trying to use audited information, right, as the best assumption of or estimation of the amounts that should become available to the general fund, and try and confirm it with the agency. And at the last meeting we were in was that they did confirm it. So I can't explain why they haven't remitted over. That's a responsibility of that autonomous agency. There's nothing in the budget law that restricts us from transferring to them their current appropriations until they report their ending balance, and should anything be due to the general fund. And I think that's maybe some language, maybe that should be input in the appropriations bill to help us use it guardrails, right? Otherwise, we are at the mercy of late audits. And so, again, that's the reason why, coming back to the single audit committee, we're working with all autonomous agencies where OPA is taking lead on keeping them on track on when will we catch up, so that our decisions today are reflected on available balances today. The best we can do is unaudited information, but again, nothing prevents us from transmitting funds to them, which would have its own issues if that were to happen. So I think it just comes back to providing updated information the best that we can so we can make decisions based on current information. So I think that whole exercise showed us that we need current financial information to make the best decisions, and we can work together on provisions that will help us do that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Secretary, and I yield, Chair.
Thank you, Senate President. Before I recognize the next member to offer their, just sticking to FY 2027, and Secretary, Madam Secretary, and Madam Vicky, just kind of looking at your submittal, the accompanying narrative with the budget, and I see a lot of legislative recommendations, which we appreciate. Some of them potentially we can do in the course to realize additional revenue projection. But I do want to ask, and maybe I'm a little, if I cite the wrong federal policy or federal law, and it's being talked about for many, many, many years here in the CNMA, and what really did anything. Then finally, the one big beautiful bill addressed that, the 1% exportation currency export tax. Can somebody speak for that? Because there's one element here that is spoken of, but there's no really clear guidance as to how much are we willing to realize as a result. It's on page 25. By the way, I'm hoping that you all got comments from Department of Commerce as to the amount of money has been exported out of the CNMI year in, year out. And the biggest exportation of such, I guess the reality is once those monies are exported, and we understand that it's very critical that our people that we ask to come here and help us service our community here, they need to take care of their obligations wherever they're from. But at the same time, we're left to not see the money circulate here. And then we're talking about a depressed revenue stream. And then the ones that are sticking with us here, the residents, end up potentially getting the brunt of the effect of not having enough revenue, aka work hour reduction. So what are we doing as far as a state government with regards to this already a federal policy, sans a legislation?
Senator, you mentioned page 25, or could we get a page number that you're referring to?
It's on your there are some, and it referenced the Revenue Council passage of revenue generating legislation that include simplify BGRT, flat base rate, including construction tax, which the current one, the most recent one, and then the transient accommodation tax, where the agency is unable to, there's some challenges to enforce. And then you have the federal remittance tax. We're saying the near-term planning should not be considered as a near-term planning. So is there any recommendation in the horizon with the administration to call for support of something like this? Because, however, these are monies that are here. And if you don't have an answer right now, that's okay, but it's just something that your presentation to the legislature is submitted. So Just
Sorry,
wanted
I was trying to recall what exactly that paragraph was saying on the remittance tax. So the remittance tax is a excise tax, and that comes from the One Big Beautiful Bill. We've been working with, or we've been discussing this with legal counsel on whether that would classify as a cover over for the CNMI, since it's a tax on CNMI residents, right? But that was still being researched up by our legal counsel. So we, again, no guarantees that that is something that we can, that the cover over can apply on, but we're having legal counsel look into that.
What's the timetable as far as the legal, guidance that we're gonna get from, or you're gonna get from your counsel?
We can expedite it.
Yeah, because I think from what I understand, it's been levied already, and anyone that's sending out, even in the CNMI, there was that tag of 1% being exported. So and I guess your entity can qualify that with the wire transfers, or the money transfer folks.
Yes.
But it is it's hurting us per se, basically, because it's money that's sent out and it's never going to circulate here. And but I appreciate if you can provide some guidance as with regards to that issue.
Yes, we can try to expedite the getting the legal review from our legal counsel.
Okay. Do you foresee, and I know this is all projection, but we're in a state of, we never really anticipate, we didn't anticipate, we never wanted this in local. But as a result of that, because in the absence of the usual tourist industry, we get other transient population here that are staying now. I would like to think that there's that revenue still being realized this fiscal year, Secretary?
Yes, what we can assume is that all people that are occupying a hotel room are paying hotel occupancy tax, and those are still due to the CNMI.
Okay. So, again, we're like, what? Let's go hypothetically 6 months out. We're really trying to rebuild and hopefully get some sort of the typical tourist to the CNMI, but I think we need to narrow perhaps the monitoring, not monthly, maybe quarterly, and do let's see how the trend is projecting forward, because either way they're gonna need rooms if they're coming here. And I asked that if there's and I think this one can be. Is there any suggestions with regards to the transient bill, this other legislation that we've been discussing? It's still in the Senate, basically, because we didn't want to move so much with it, because we wanted Division of Revenue and Tax to allow themselves to make sure that when we do move it out of the Senate, it's enforceable and its capability to enforcing. I'm talking about the B&B, Airbnb. Can you speak to that?
Just trying to speak off the top of my head. I don't remember every detail that I annotated in the comments I submitted at that time when the bill was in discussion. But the main issues that I recall are that its enforceability is we don't have the system to receive the payments, and we also don't have the authority to enforce outside entities that exist outside of the CNMI. For example, Airbnb, right? The website Airbnb that's hosting Airbnbs from the CNMI. If we try to enforce them, they could just remove those Airbnbs from their website and then not even work with the CNMI at all. So it's just like they don't exist in the CNMI, they just exist online. So how do we enforce them to come and get a license from us? Is kind of like what I'm asking. And pay for it. And, you know, if we don't have the system, or the system or the software that allows them to easily just transmit payments when they receive payments online to, you know, remit the taxes that they collect, then that's also another compliance issue, is we're asking them to do something that we're not capable of having them do for us. We don't have the system structure to do that.
Okay. So is there any recommendation as to whom should be the appropriate people, or, I mean, how, I guess, I'm asking for guidance as to how to make it work. Because we want to capture those populists that are coming in.
Sorry, if we look at how the other jurisdictions are doing it, there's other ways that they get these entities to cooperate, and not just forcing them to do it by getting them to be licensed. For example, one way is to enter into an agreement with them, you know, have an agreement that they voluntarily agree to withhold and remit hotel occupancy taxes. That's one way of doing it.
Okay, what if I ask a general question so that we can overcome this? And I know it could become a jurisdictional issue because we have a autonomous agency that's also a revenue generating agency that would like their funds, but maybe looking at HOT and improving it perhaps, and treat it as if it's either an exit fee or an entry fee, because we can actually track these people when you're coming in, when you file a customs form. There's a category there where you're saying, are you going to stay at a hotel, at an apartment, or a residence, and all that. And you can actually use that as a baseline, you know, information to qualify whether they're actually staying. Because you know that if they're coming in as a tourist, you know, you're going to have to ask them, where are you staying? Are you staying at the Crown? Are you staying at Kensington? And if they're not staying, they're staying somewhere else. That could potentially be non-binding to Hanmi. Therefore, it triggers the question as to, okay, so where are you staying? How are you? We want to tag you for X amount to qualify for the B&B. Instead of like using the portal, if that's the challenge, that we don't have the legal authority to dig into that and just take it off their site, can we just do it on ground level? Is that something that you would support?
So it seems like this is something where if a tourist comes in, they pay to enter the CNMI as a tourist, instead of paying hotel occupancy tax when they reside in a hotel. This is something that another country does, but there's really, I have not seen any examples of other U.S. jurisdictions that are doing this. So I guess we can look into, you know, does this violate any U.S. Constitution on forcing somebody to pay a fee in order to enter the CNMI as a U.S. citizen?
I mean, you know, again,
I guess that's something we just have to look into.
Yeah, again, we're trying to figure out a way to service our public programs here in our community. So, you know, I respectfully ask that you work with Dustin. Is your legal counsel?
Yes.
Yeah, please ask him to see how we can facilitate this so we can push the bill out to you know, allow for this to realize some of the forecasts in the upside, so to speak. So,
I support the transit accommodation tax bill. Though I just question the enforcement provision of it, because it makes it very difficult to enforce. Is kind of what's hard about it. And so if we make changes to that, I believe everything else can still work out.
Okay, so we'll flag that as a return, no? While we work through our projection moving forward. Because believe me, this is not going to be the last time we're going to have a meeting with your agency to talk about the budget. So, yeah, I'm going to yield time. Vice President, do you want to, or I'm sorry, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to go back to the the remittance. So I don't know if you guys have looked at Commerce's website as to how much has been remitted thus far. And I actually sent this information to the late governor in 2025 because it was very, I was deeply concerned about the amount of remittance that was going out of the CNMI. So from 2007 to 2023, a total of $1.3 billion left the CNMI. And a big chunk of that was in 2020 and 2021. If we look back at those during that timeline, that was the COVID, right? And you wouldn't believe the amount of money that went out of the CNMI. It's in excess of $20 million. In 1 year, it left the CNMI. Again, so it was a period of 3 consecutive years where remittance was over 20 million. And so that's definitely something that we need to keep track on. I know that Marissa Flores already introduced a bill 24-72 to kind of address that remittance issue. It passed the House back in March of this year, and I believe it's now in the Fiscal Affairs Committee. But that's definitely something that we need to take a look at and act on it, right, to reduce the amount of monies that are flowing out of the CNMI. We have so much money coming in from the federal, but yet there's also a lot of money flowing out. So that's definitely something that we need to safeguard and make sure that we understand that monies need to go out to families and stuff like that, but we also need to think of ourselves here and the struggles that we are facing as a result of those types of actions. So I just wanted to share that, that in just the period of, a little bit over a decade, it's quite a lot of money, $1.35 billion left the CNMI. So I'm not sure if, I came late, so I'm not sure if this was already covered in the beginning of the meeting, but I was looking at the May 1st letter that was submitted by the governor regarding the budget, and I just wanted to get some clarification. So on the first page of the letter, and so I guess for this upcoming fiscal budget, they identified $172 million worth of collections, right, based on the task force that was working on the revenue projections. And so out of this $172 million, there was a one-time, it says there was a removal of a one-time revenues. Can you just elaborate a little bit on what that one-time removal is?
Those are the one-time revenue streams, such as the receipt of payment from the bankruptcy of the casino. We remove that from the historical total collection from FY25 because we don't anticipate to get that again.
So is that the only thing that was removed, or
Both
were
the
there?
tax and the penalties.
Got it. And then can you just explain what the risk factor to account for economic uncertainty?
So again, this was discussed with the Revenue Council. This is an 11-member council that also represents the Chamber of Commerce and the Governor's Council of Economic Advisors, the Department of Labor, CEDA, Economic Development Authority, of course, Department of Finance, Management and Budget, MVA. And so the discussion was, because there is economic uncertainty and factors that were coming from MVA about the airlines,
Sure.
Maybe suspension of flights, and the business climate coming from the chamber. It was a decision based on those factors of discussion with the council that 5% should be applied to account for the economic uncertainty.
How did they arrive to the 5%?
Just looking at the forecast and the BGRTs and just the anticipation of potential loss of airline seats and the impacts to the businesses. When we tallied that impact, the council decided we were discussing between 2% to 5%, and because of the input from the private sector, we as a council believe it should be at 5%
Okay.
and apply that percentage reduction across the board.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And one last thing, on the budget submission, under under less debt service previously appropriated, there's a line item there for bank charges in the amount of $2.3 million. Can you just explain to us what that is?
Those are the charges for merchant services and for processing of the bond payments.
Has it always been
It has
captured
always,
under?
it has
Okay.
always been captured.
Okay, great. Thank you,
cost. Thank
Secretary. Thank you, Chair Ayu.
Susmasi Vice President, the floor leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you maybe explain how you come up with the projections for the construction tax? And is this inclusive of all infrastructure activities that are listed through OGM or CIP?
So through the council, which DRT is also a part of, we gathered the collections to date and then information from the Office of Planning and Development, Public Assistance Office, and in consideration of the enforcement challenges at that time, we felt that it was more conservative to base it off the collections to date. However, as we anticipate a revised budget in on July 1st, I believe Director has here 3 scenarios that his team we're trying to refine that projection. So there is a low, a medium, and a high, all again depending on the progress of construction. And so post Sinlaku, we can expect that the construction companies may be delayed in some instances. So again, we're just trying our best to forecast what that's going to look like, because construction tax is only based on revenues received by the contractors for progress payments. So again, it's a fluid thing, and we're trying our best to come up with scenarios. So maybe you can share a little bit of what you have.
Yeah, so how we came up with the projection was we take the gross revenue from the previous year of every construction activity that was reported. We factor in recurring activities because not every project is going to be recurring every single year. Non-residential, because residential constructions are exempt. The subcontractors are also exempt, so we have to factor in what percentage of the revenue would come from the primary contractors, and then the overall percentage of the overall revenue that are going to be over 350,000, because that is the threshold. And then once we calculate all that, we get the effective base amount that's taxable, and then just multiply by 3% tax, and that's how we come up with our scenario. So we came up with a very conservative projection, and then at like 8% effective, or 8% taxable amount from the overall construction revenue, up to 45% of the overall reported gross revenue from the previous years.
Okay, so but it's already inclusive of all the expected projects that may be coming in the next fiscal year, based on any grants that are EDA, all of that has already been incorporated into this figure that is reported.
Yes, every project that was reported to us from the other agencies that we got the data from, that's what we included.
So how is this? Because when the idea was first proposed, we were projecting, or your office was projecting somewhere in the upwards of 4 million. How has that changed from the time it was proposed up until today on your projections?
I think now that we're in the implementation process, we started, of course, with the development of the tax forms, and then outreach to contractors about their new obligations to file. and then the actual filing from taxpayers understanding their interpretation of the first version of the law. And so we saw very low collections. Again, with the passage of the new law to strengthen enforcement, we're hoping that that would increase the collections. But also, we are now based, again, at a different point in time today with the data that's being provided by the other agencies on the time frame of construction for these projects. And so if we're projecting only for that fiscal year, we have to look at every project and the anticipated construction progress and the progress payments that we anticipate to be paying based on those projects. So again, it's just a change with both enforcement side of things and then the actual construction that's happening, that's taxable and collected. So I think we just need more time to implement the new tax, and post-Sinlaku, I think that's going to be a challenge on the contractor side to fulfill the contracts within the time frame that we're forecasting. But again, it's there's multiple factors there.
And lastly, just going back to the 4.9, if we were to, let's just say, give PSS its 25% of that amount, what would the remaining 75% do if we kept it within the government, within the general fund?
Can you just repeat that question?
So the
sir?
4.9 that is currently with PSS that is pending action from the legislature, if we, let's just say, give PSS the 25% of that, and maybe not for PSS to transfer back the 75%, but offset it with what is owed for the upcoming quarters, what can that do for the general fund, or even just can that be used towards bringing back a certain number of hours, or I don't know how much is needed per pay period? What would 3.5 million do?
75% would be 3.683.
Right.
However, the governor has proposed to give the full $4.9 million to PSS to meet that 40 million, a little bit over 40 million that's required of the 25%. So it would just go back towards, the students' first instructional 180 days. However, we know that this year, PSS is thinking outside the box on how that 180 days, how they would meet that 180 days by like maybe having summer schools, to meet that 180-day requirement.
Okay. But let's just say if we were to keep it within the general fund, would that even make a dent in restoring some hours to the government employees?
We could either lift an hour of current austerity, or we could just take that $3.6 million and dump it into the disaster operations account currently. We need an immediate cash infusion to be able to pay vendors.
Okay.
Right now.
Thank you. That's all I have, Chair. You.
Thank you, Flor. I just have one question or a couple of questions. Unless I missed it, Secretary and Ms. B, what about the revolving accounts for the agencies that are trying to self-sustain and using it? I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Maybe I missed it, but is there any reporting on that with regards?
There is. It's part of Volume 1, but in a separate allocation, separate notation. It just says Volume 1 Special Fund, but it's there.
Okay, what page is that? So let me just I'm trying to look at it here. So,
it's in a separate email.
Oh, can you just share the number? What is the?
It's its own package.
Also, I mean, usually we try to use statistics or data from previous to account for potentially for the following year. Correct? Is that how we do it with the revolving, or it varies?
Revolving is straight from the system.
Okay. Yeah, the reason why I ask because there is a steady flow of CQ. You know, like with even if the storm coming in, the response to the storm, even prior to that, we have construction going on Tinian with the military footprints, and our people are collecting. So, Secretary, if you can just
Sure.
help with the discussion as to how are we rolling that out right now? Because I see a letter that was commissioned recently to remove or to lift the austerity on the biosecurity and customs, and which I'm hoping that it's approved and we support because not for nothing, they're really going out there and collecting, and what better way for them to continue on that trend and collection by giving them that exemption.
Yes, Senator, if I can just direct you to the revenue projection, which is also the same for current year, is that there is a collection for the CQ fees. However, the earmark to customs is suspended. So every collection on the CQ goes into the general fund pot that is appropriated in the budget. So that is not available. At least new revenues that are collected in this fiscal year, that last fiscal year, was part of the overall net available budget. That's to answer the question of them collecting. That's helping for general fund collections because the earmark is suspended. So in the forecast on line 43, the CIQ overtime revolving fund is suspended. It's zeroed out there. That
Okay.
means anything that we collect, which we are forecasting on line 33, all of that collection would go towards the general fund for net
So-
appropriation.
So this current fiscal year is referring to.
Yes.
So what is the response to the committee with regards to that request by Director Mafnas?
Okay, so I actually just had a meeting this morning at EOC regarding that request because Customs, the Division of Customs is being asked to, of course, support the EOC activities for, I believe, ESF 12, and now we're talking about ESF 11, which is both security of disaster response areas, and now we're talking about biosecurity for any disaster-related imports, and also debris removal. And because this requires a lot of manpower, we did ask for the exemption on the austerity because they need to go beyond 80 hours to be able to address all these needs. That was approved by the governor because it was requested by EOC for all those additional activities beyond their daily operation.
This is across the CNMI, correct?
Yes, and
So- Because I see it firsthand, our customs and biosecurity, not even here, but I speak for Tinian, senatorial district. I see them clearing
Yeah.
Cargoes, and they work through. And I think it's important that we continue to support the efforts as created by their statute, to what they're supposed to do. And I have also reasons to believe that this is the most vulnerable point right now for any ports when all kinds of materials coming in, and if we don't have the proper people to do the clearance because they went beyond their time or what have you, then we're in trouble. Because we're going to be doing crisis management. So I appreciate that you qualify now before the committee that the request for exemption with austerity of customs and biosecurity is approved across the CNMI. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And now, in order to manage or control expenditures, we did discuss with Customs and EOC that we will review the needs of EOC on a rolling 30-day basis to see the level of manpower they are requiring from customs, and we'll go from there. But right now, because we're in the initial disaster recovery, they are part of EOC response.
Okay.
So yes, Senator.
How's that gonna play out, Secretary? So I'm a customs and now I can work post to respond to the call, and so I'm now getting paid overtime to respond to a.
Most likely, again, they still have to follow the civil service regulation to
Of course,
calculate
yeah,
overtime.
yeah.
But I'll rely on Director Mafnas and his team. They're going to go back and redo scheduling so that we are able to respond to all the different requests from EOC on top of the normal operations at the seaport, airport, and post office.
And this is also qualifies us to book it as a forced labor account, to which we're potentially going to be get reimbursed for the expense.
Yes, they've been advised to ensure they complete their ICS 214 forms to track all disaster-related activity.
Okay, so do you have any knowledge as to how long this disaster going to be, like the declaration? Where are we at now?
That is between the EOC and the
But right
government.
now we're in what day? Sorry,
Like 33, I think.
so but typically is like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, right? Or
The declaration is renewed every 30 days. So again, we come back with EOC and the GAR and discuss. They advise the governor on whether to extend the declaration. My part in it is, of course, the disaster expenditures, but for customs, it's
Okay.
a part of our division. So
So I want to embark with this because yesterday we had a meeting with CUC, and they're also challenged with importation of materials, to be delayed. So that means they'll be getting in materials. They said every 2 weeks they'll be coming in. So that means there's going to be ships to be cleared, right? So I would like to just flag that it's important that we keep that, we could track because that's still a response to the recovery. Saipan, there's partial power going back, but there's still a long ways. And just yesterday, they revealed that Tinian, which is zero power right now, we're looking at 2 weeks because of the lack of materials. There's also we wish it's faster than that, but again, that's beyond our control for now. I just want to flag that also requires their presence at the ports once they come in. I have a couple more, but I'll yield to any member that wish to go second round, third round, or I think Vice President.
Hi. Before we leave for the day, I just thought I'd ask, what's the financial impact on the government with all these upfront costs that weren't anticipated? Because right now, whatever cash on hand that you guys have, we're using to pay all these premium pays that we've, incurred. And, with past experiences with FEMA, although a lot of these are reimbursable, we normally don't see them until, way down the line. So what is the financial impact on the government with regards to all these typhoon expenses that we're incurring? And are we okay financially, like what, looking out 2-3 months from now? Because I just came from the board meeting at CUC and it's not looking good. Like, it's not good. So
Currently for the general fund, just the executive branch, not including component units, we are at 883,000. That's the impact only on operational side. Now for the cost of personnel for people responding, that has not hit the Munis system yet. It's in process right now.
so they haven't paid it out yet.
No, the
Okay.
first paycheck would be.
Okay. Is it
I'll yield to the secretary.
is it also at 2.5?
There's guidance that were given out to the timekeepers to correctly calculate typhoon pay or overtime pay due to the disaster. So not everybody's entitled to 2.5. Yeah.
Okay. But we don't have an estimated cost of what that would be?
We don't have yet because the timesheets are still being processed. So once that's entered by payroll, we'll be able to see it in the account.
But once it's entered by payroll, we are committed and responsible for paying. So we're processing all of that without knowing how much money we have, whether or not we can even afford
It's still
it?
an obligation of the CNMI,
Right.
right, to pay the employees, so we must book that to the system. The timeline for actual payment, again, depends on our cash position.
Mm-hmm.
And you were asking about what is our current cash position. We are in a severe stress right
Yes.
now. And I don't want to alarm anyone any further, but we don't have a cushion. We
Right.
don't have rainy day funds. And so we are highly reliant on the business community to pay their taxes on time.
Which is
who-
also a
who are
problem,
also
right?
affected
Because
by the storm.
a lot of them are
Yeah.
still closed, so their ability to pay for their BGR and whatever other expenses has been reduced significantly, which is why I'm asking this question, because I know it will have a great impact on the CNMI's ability to pay for all of its obligations. So, it's just something to think about. I mean, I don't know where we are financially, so I know with CUC that the chairman today was deeply concerned because it's from the CFO's report, it looks like they might only have 2 more weeks worth of cash on hand to sustain them. And they're worried about that because they're burning the cash quicker than they are collecting, right? So we just want to make sure that the government is also mindful of that and tracking, the funds. Okay. Thank you, Secretary. I yield, Chair.
Thank you, Vice President. Senator Manglonia, Paul.
Trying to understand how the budget works here, and so let's say in the last typhoon we borrowed 15 million from MPLT, right? I believe we did that, right? Okay, so let's say that we have 15 million, so we take care of all these overtime and all the emergency needs. So the money will be reimbursed after the fiscal year. So that means next fiscal year, we will have, when we get reimbursed, the revenue projection will go up $15 million. Is that what how we're going to handle the numbers? So we incur 15 million expenses this year, but the reimbursement is at the end of the fiscal year. So that will be counted toward the revenue for next year, right? And of course, the expenditure for next year will be whatever you're paying the loan. So let's say we pay 1 million a year. So next year, the revenue difference will be, we're going to have an increase in revenue of 9 million. 14 million, right? That's how the numbers work.
Senator, that's a very general, high-level way to look at it. However, from my understanding of past borrowings for disaster-related expense, I think it was very specific on the expenditures where that money was going to be used. So I would assume that if those funds were already committed, then there would not be additional revenue to include in the next fiscal year for
Well, the funds wouldn't be
reappropriation.
committed, right? Because we're committing 1 million a year. So next year our commitment is 1 million, but we're getting a check of 15 million from.
There's a lot of factors involved, and I can't say without seeing the exact agreement for the borrowing and what exactly is going to be covered. But generally, I think from our understanding of prior disasters were either these were expenses that were already booked but not paid, and we needed an infusion of cash to pay those expenditures. That's one thing. And then reimbursement would come at a later time for those that needed to go through the FEMA process rather than the MPLT process. So there's a lot of different mechanisms to try and pay our vendors and pay the disaster expenses. So I guess we just need to follow what's the requirement of the funding that's becoming available to understand. So I'm hesitant to give you an answer that's it's a complex. situation.
Thank you, Secretary. Chairman, I'll yield, but before I do, I'd like to recognize former Senator from Guam, who's here also helping us in the disaster recovery here, former Senator Carlota Don Guerrero. Thank you for visiting us.
Good day, Senator. Welcome. Welcome back. Okay, any other member that wish to pose a question to Secretary and Senator Cruz?
Secretary, back to what Senator Poe was saying. So that it's not going to add up on the following year, the reimbursement. So what is it's kind of like replenish an agency, or where you get the money from? How you work with that? Because that one is already been, for example, you're paying MPOT with our resources, right? The reimbursement will come, and we witnessed that the FEMA, it took a year to get the reimbursement, right? So how you paying MPOT?
The MPLT borrowing in the past was tied to the interest income of the corpus,
Mm-hmm.
and they held on to our interest income rather
Okay.
than sending it to the general fund, and they held that revenue stream until the loan was paid off.
So those that are being covered.
So it wasn't coming from our tax collections to pay
Okay.
MPLT.
Now
Yeah.
the reimbursement came 1 year thereafter. How you work with those?
So in a disaster, revenues that are collected that go towards disaster expenditures also should have gone to expenditures that were planned for in the budget, that were appropriated expenditures such as payroll and other vendors that
So
provided
you
a
pay
service.
automatically straight to
It-
that, rather than coming to the legislature for appropriation, the
Well,
reimbursement.
Those expenditures were already appropriated. So the cash that should have went to
I know.
them, yeah,
But the what I mean the
the prior year.
yes, the reimbursement.
Yes. So
You-
the
you-
reimbursement is, like I said, it's a reimbursement of cash that should have went towards appropriated expenditures, but instead went to disaster expenditures. And I'm talking about prior year, right?
Yes.
And when those cash come in, it should go towards the appropriated expenditures that were already made. Vendors that have been waiting to be paid for those
Just going
appropriated.
directly to the
So the vendors
without
that have been,
without coming to the legislature. Is that
but
how
those
it
are
works?
expenditures that already been appropriated but are not paid.
Yeah, but that you said it's appropriated, but spend it already with other source, right? Because we have to use our source before they reimburse, right?
Yeah, so for example, there are non-related expenditures not related to disaster, right?
Okay.
Payroll will
Also
continue
those.
to incur, overtime will continue to incur, payments to your vendors for normal
But those are not related to
operations.
disaster, are not reimbursable, right?
Most likely
They're not reimbursable because
yeah.
they're not
Not related to the
they're not
related
they're not
to the
subject for
disaster.
reimbursement, right?
Yeah, so what we do is
What I'm talking about, the reimbursement side.
Yeah, so when the reimbursed costs, when the funds come in, that money now should be paying those appropriated expenditures that it should have gone to. So this year, for example, this budget was only anticipating our payroll and normal operations, right? So when a disaster hits, those are unexpected expenditures. So rather than that dollar going to pay for what we had planned, that dollar is now going to the disaster expenditure. And when that dollar comes back, it needs to pay what we had planned for.
Okay, so
Yeah, so that's how the application of prior year reimbursements have been applied.
so in the previous, all your reimbursement goes straight to what are you explaining? It doesn't come to us for reappropriation.
Yes, because that revenue has already been recognized. It has already been received, right? But rather it was applied to a disaster expenditure. So that revenue is not recognized again when the reimbursement comes in. It's just applied to an expense that already exists based on the appropriation.
I think we good. Thank you, members, I know that this is the beginning, the one of the many meetings. So I do want to. It's not a question, Secretary, but Senator Kawa, did you want to take a crack out of some questions to the panel before we're good? Absolutely, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I'd like to thank because yes, there's a lot going on right now. So it's just better understanding the platform of the initial proposed Chairman, and taking a look at the ask. The only thing through the governor's message in general was, knowing me, PSS chair, on all the negative attributes, and then you get that 12% calculation, and learning the history on how, the AG's slip opinion and how we calculate things and so forth. So because it's going to come back to that question of how do we derive the 25% and how much are they allowable with regards to seeing my public school system, the 25% for 2027. The big question for me going through my head is, when the budget is presented and that 25% is showcased, do they run with your numbers, or do they have their own figures at hand prior to, that's where I'm trying to, see where they're coming from, in regards to that calculation, because it always seems to be like it states, that gap. And for me, better understanding as a chair, how that plays out in the financial aspect of it, where they're going to receive after assessments or trajectory, and then their proposal versus Department of Finance's, facts and figures and statement. Yeah, how does that work out? Do they get firsthand information prior to their proposed, or you two are different? Yeah. Secretary. Yeah.
I'm not sure how they calculate their 25%, but it should be the estimated total budgetary gross. That's the general revenues. However, their proposal for FY 2027 was 52 million, and if you look at PSS, 52 million. They used to have over 10,000 students, 10,050 if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we've all been through this process so many times. PSS, although the number of students have declined, their budget keeps growing. And so that's the public school system.
Yes, thank you. So I have some questions, but I know it's not addressed. It's just trying to understand the numbers and the presentation we have at hand. So thank you, Chairman, Secretary.
If I may add, we've had multiple discussions with PSS on the calculation, and in our last budget, we sat with them and we discussed about the gross revenues, the earmarks, the special earmarks, the general earmarks, and we sat down and said, okay, these should be in the calculation, this should be out of the calculation. And the way that we, or at least OMB had prepared this year, is taking those discussions into account so that we can move forward with PSS on a calculation that's acceptable to both parties. And that's what's been presented by the governor.
Thank you. I was just questioning too on hand, I know they do get a number of federal grants, so the question is also with the granting and stuff, and then their matching funds and so forth. These are just going through my mind, so I'll get the questions. Probably it's not necessarily addressed to you. It's knowing that there is a positive. It's a great thing, because, but when everybody is at a negative, they're at a positive, it's going to be a big question. And then the 40-hour cut. So this is, serious business, and unfortunately a historical situation we're in. So Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Secretary and team.
Thank you.
And
Thank
all
you,
in-
Senator Calvo. Just to kind of reiterate the conversation earlier, so last year or this fiscal year, we were able to get infusion of 29 million perhaps from MPLT, correct, to service the minimum required payment. But following year we don't have that, so that represents the takedown of, although it's almost near the same revenue projection, but there's no additional funds to cover that, so that gave rise to the. So we're going to continue meeting, and I hope that it is our hope that we also get the guidance from the administration by way of the financial folks to see if we can better project forward, so that we don't need to be forced to do a part-time government service, because it's going to affect. It's going to be a vicious cycle. It's going to affect also the businesses that are trying to come in and pay for their taxes, because there's a limited, potentially limited working hours or government hours. I would like to emphasize, though, that the reimbursement that we're going to get this year or whenever is, I kindly ask that report to the legislature often, if it's post 60 days, if it's something that we can take into account for an appropriation. It is the position of the legislature that it should be called a revenue and not a reimbursement after so long. Are we anticipating any from previous past or for this year, or
I think that's a question that would be
next meeting?
referred to the Public Assistance Office.
Okay.
Because they continue to process. However, those are pending payments.
Sure.
And we have what they call process called direct to vendor payment.
Okay.
So it's tied specifically to outstanding invoices that are going to be paid and covered by the program. So, I believe they can give you an update on any anticipated
So you
payments
recommend?
to vendors.
Do you recommend that we have them come
Sure,
in
yeah.
and meet and have this conversation again in the next few?
It's timely, yes.
Okay, that's good, so that we can also have more clearer, information. Not that you're not providing, but like them to do in a real time. Ms. V, did you want to say
Yeah,
something?
and just to add on to that, so every project worksheet written for every subrecipient that had been approved for, work that needs to be completed, those funds are tied to that particular project worksheet. So it's like a federal program coming in, giving you money to like repair your facility. That fund should go towards that repair.
Okay.
And then the requirement on our part is whatever the end result of what the matching requirement would be. Right now it's at 100% for the first 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, if there's no request submitted for a full waiver or for all the programs or a reduced cost share, then, the matching would either be 25% or 10% or 100%, one of them.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that clarification. I also want to flag, Secretary, in the budget this year that we overwrote a certain portion for access to our fiscal analyst of the financial system. That's only for viewing, for us to already reference. So if I kindly ask that we take heed on that provision of the law, so that Dave can access the information that's however the provision of the law says.
Thank you, Senator. We'll wait for your official request for who and their titles, and we'll process.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna mute or adjourn this meeting for now. However, I want to just give you a heads up that we'll be calling again this meeting, and next time I would take your recommendation that we're gonna call in Public Assistance Office. Is that what you're saying? And I also would like to ask Director Alvarez, please guide us with this transient population, this BMB thing. So we really want to move on that, but we want to, the sooner the better, because I know that although there's a diminishing amount of people coming in, but they're still coming in. And, I'm anticipating that there's a return of some of the airlines in the next couple of months. So we don't want to miss out on those potential revenue stream, because we hate, honestly, I'll tell you right now, I don't support 40-hour work week. So we all need to work together to see if we can realize a revenue stream, however it is, to make sure that our people do not resort to that. Because I think right now, just having this conversation publicly, they're already looking at what's next, and I hate to see our people leave the islands because they're looking for other opportunities. It makes our work even harder. No, so with that, at this time I entertain a motion. Did you wanna? Okay, let me stick to the agenda. Sorry. So any announcements? Nothing further. Adjournment. Any member to offer a motion to adjourn? Has been offered by the floor leader. Do we hear a second? It's been seconded. All those in favor to adjourn this meeting, please say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Fiscal Affairs Committee meetings stands adjourned. Thank you.